Hello, everyone, and welcome to our special little mini podcast with myself and Squee. Say hi, Squee.
Hi.
And Piff.
Hello.
And Burnerator. And Burnerator.
Hi. Sorry.
And that's okay. Burn just needs to be introduced twice. He loves his name. And Brianna, of course.
And Kriana.
Perfect. Yeah, we gotta put the marquee name up there.
Yep.
And for those of you who are just joining in, this podcast is to be mini catch-ups, mini summaries of our adventures playing a pen and paper role-playing game called RIFTS, in which I am the DM and these other four individuals play as characters. So this little podcast episode is going to deal with episodes 1 to 24 of the master playlist. It should only be about 30 to 40 minutes long. We've allotted about 35 minutes worth of time. We're going to kind of summarize some stuff, major events that happened from both myself, the GM, and the players' perspectives. And then we've allotted maybe some time after that to answer any questions for the folks here in our live chat and all that good stuff. So to get things started, how about we start off with how we actually started off the entire campaign and introducing the players and their characters. So does anyone want to go first?
I'm drawing Al. He should go first.
Okay, I guess Al will go first. So, Al is a character that is a traveling doctor, traveling through the Rifts, Michigan area, and he's very open-going. He's very kind-hearted, which I hope most doctors are, and. We were never really clear on how the party got together, but he met up with these party members and began traveling with them in under the efforts or hopes of just going to towns and plying his trade.
If I remember correctly, the setup was pretty simple. Uh, Al met Patrick, a town over. They decided to travel together for a little while. Mila kind of started following them, and then Tom met them on the
Oh
road, and
yeah,
that's where we
I
started
do
things
remember
off.
that. Mila just kind of started
Yeah.
following them.
Indeed.
Al's got a cybernetic eye that he hides a lot by wearing sunglasses, and a cybernetic right hand arm thing that he hides a lot by wearing gloves.
Great. Who should go next?
I will go next.
Patrick.
Wait, are you drawing Mila?
No, I was gonna continue drawing Al because chibis are easier, but I can draw Patrick now.
Okay.
Draw whoever you want as Piffy speaks.
All right. So my character's name is Patrick Kinsman, and
Sorry.
thank you for that.
Got nervous.
Let's see. He's actually a fairly normal-esque person, just kind of going out and trying to have a small adventure with some people that he feels will help him along his way for doing such things. Um, he's a bit of a tinkerer. He has a particular vehicle that's kind of patchwork together that he likes to drive around and have the good times with his friends.
Nice. Cool. How about Burn goes next? That's okay by you, introducing Tom?
Sure. For the first few episodes, Tom was fairly. He kept to himself most of the time, but he is a 16-year-old kid. Um, Black hair, green eyes. If I recall correctly, it was green eyes, or was it hazel? Something like
Green.
that.
Yeah.
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 Um, and he just kind of kept to himself. He has a motorcycle. He writes down in a journal after every day, and yada yada. That's pretty much it.
Okie dokie. And Kriana, you're next.
Mila is my character. She's a babe. She's super hot. She doesn't really battle. She's kind of hot. What? She's
No,
babe.
she is super hot. She has a high physical beauty score. Yep.
Yeah.
He was agreeing with you.
Oh! I thought he was arguing.
No, no, I would not argue on that.
She's hot. She doesn't really battle. She's kind of comes off as a pacifist, and she's weird. She's just kind of a goofy kind of gal. About it. She just started
Cool.
following him. She got lonely, so.
Fair enough. Fair enough. And she had a. Oh no, never mind.
Motorcycle?
Never mind. Yeah, she had the
Motorcycle.
She had a
motorcycle.
hammer.
What was it? What's her name? She had a hammer. No, Melissa. That's right.
Yeah.
Melissa. Her beat up old motorcycle. That's right.
Disgusting piece of crap. Yeah.
So, with that underway, let's talk about the first adventure that you guys had. I'll kind of set things up based on what I remember, but feel free to like interject at any sort of point as we kind of collectively go through this. So I remember we started off the entire campaign with literally a dead man pointing the way. He had like his chest and his face smashed pretty bad, and I remember you guys did some diagnostics on him to find out what happened, and it pointed you towards a little tiny hamlet of a town called Fletcher that looked like it saw some recent fighting. One of the buildings was still kind of smoking from it, and clearly a lot of the populace was withdrawn, and you were approached by a gentleman who later introduced himself as Diego, and I recall he told you that this town isn't open for business. You'd have to do your trading someplace else. You should leave. And you guys didn't want to leave, did you?
No, we didn't.
Well, no, we
Mm.
didn't.
Fair enough. Yeah, well, things clearly were fishy. I recall though that you guys diffused the situation by Al implying that not only was he a medical doctor, but he was also a provider of certain carnal comforts.
Mm-hmm.
He's a pimp.
He's a pimp. Yeah.
He implied that Mila was merchandise. And with that, Diego got very warm and welcoming and offered you guys to eat with him while he flirted with Mila, and you guys started to, quote-unquote, negotiate a price.
Should be pointed out that Mila wasn't necessarily told about this beforehand. Al was just like, I'm so
No.
sorry, I'm so sorry, roll with this.
Yeah, like, what?
Mind you, these guys are practically strangers at this point.
Yeah.
To each other too, which is really funny. I remember while you were eating, one of the townswomen who came out, she left a note in one of the salads, and I believe it was Tom and Patrick who read that, which was pretty much, and it was pretty much just a cry for help. It was just like, help, they've taken over this town, these three thugs. So I remember Al and Mila luring Diego off to a nearby house for some implied snoo-snoo.
Snoo.
And I recall Al sticking the guy in the neck with a paralyzing agent, suffocating him to death, and then hiding him in a root cellar.
Yep.
Yeah, we stuck him with the sleeping agent while they were at the table, and then Mila and Al kind of carried him to the building like, oh yeah, they're gonna get some alone time now. And then Al asked the girl if this guy was like threatening the whole town, and when she said yes, then he smothered him with a blanket.
That's right. Now, also during this kind of introduction of Diego, there was another fellow named Gino who was a full conversion Borg. a person who has pretty much uh, gotten rid of most of their humanity with the exception of their brain and parts of their spine and converted everything else to like military machinery. And this guy was keep an eye on the group, but he was also clearly guarding a large house in the distance. And when things started to go down and Diego disappeared, Gino came looking for him, and that's when a fight broke out between Gino, another guy inside the house that he was guarding, later would be introduced as Max, and then the party, who held out in the house that had Diego buried in the root cellar. There was a firefight. The woman almost, Mila, I remember, hid underneath the table. The woman almost died from stray fire, but Gino's weapon jammed. And you guys exchanged some fire until most of the laser blasts were kind of plinking off Gino's like metal form. Until Al did a sniper shot in the guy's left eye and blew it out and killed him. After seeing that big ass Borg killed in a few shots, the last bandit who held Fletcher for ransom kind of gave up, and the town decided to hang him because the party got to the computer logs of these bandits and their old gear and their old Jeep, and found out that these guys pretty much just kind of stumbled upon this town because they were supposed to do a job looking for some relic for this guy named Dan Perrin. And while they were doing so, they came across this village and said, screw, Dan Perrin's job. We're going to stay here and take over this town, live really fat off these people until a trade caravan comes by. We'll rob it and then leave this joint. They found this out through a series of audio logs. But the town people ended up hanging Max for the crimes against the town. And the party got a tip about, why these guys were in this area. They were looking for some artifact in some witch's cave, and they got some general coordinates. They did some scouting ahead of time, but once again, they didn't bother to actually do the job. And that was the plot hook for the next adventure. Before we move on to that, though, I also remember after the fight, while you guys are getting everything organized, you were talking about defending yourselves or something, and I remember, I think it was Al who handed Mila some fragmentary grenades, and he's like, so when you're scared, you just pull the pin and throw it at the enemy. And she's like, I know what a grenade is.
Yeah.
You guys recall that?
Yes, I definitely recall that.
Yep.
It was like that look of indignation, like, really?
Yeah. Like, I know how grenades work.
A little bit behind the scenes there, that was the first hint at what was to come, in the fact that I created the situation and I assumed the players are going to address it one way, but they clearly didn't when offering a fellow player as a prostitute and then tricking one of the big bags and suffocating him. And then shooting a Borg in the eye is definitely not something a GM plans for. But it was definitely exciting, that's for damn sure. We also found out that Tom or Byrne didn't take the literacy skill, so he wasn't able to read that little help me note. And it was next session that we switched out the skills, because Tom didn't realize that, in order to be literate in the game of Rifts, you have to take that skill. The bulk of the population in this post-apocalyptic world can't friggin' read, right? So, yeah. Mm-hmm. So, moving on, you guys followed up to the little witch's cave, if I remember correctly. You did some land navigation skills. You got to the area without interest. Wow, I'm just going through my notes and I was amazed how much detail I wrote down. I don't do that anymore.
Oh, well, good for you for the time being.
Yeah, for the time being. Well, I mean, I write down some good notes, but like I wrote down like everything. It's crazy. But pretty much it was a cave in the side of a cliff face. And it was pretty dark and there were two guards outside and they weren't really moving. They were in like body armor and they had laser weapons, but like the group got within like 500 meters of them and they didn't do anything. It wasn't until they got closer, within 60 feet or so, that these things kind of stirred to life and attacked.
Hmm.
There was a skirmish. At this point, during this fight, we found out something about Tom,
Hmm.
right?
Yep.
Go ahead.
This is the fight that we found out that Tom is a burster and has pyrokinetic powers.
Hmm. Which means he can make and control fire with his brain, which is awesome.
Indeed.
So yeah, yeah. So these two unknown guards individuals were fried and shot and killed. I also remember before you guys entered the cave, there was a long discussion, and Patrick is really concerned about the condition of his armor. Am I right
Oh
on
yeah.
that? Remembering that?
Yeah, I remember that.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. He was really concerned about the condition of his armor, and because of that, I'm pretty sure it was Al and Tom who took the lead into
Yeah.
the cave itself.
It was
Yeah.
just Tom and Al. And the
Mm.
first guy that we encountered, Tom kind of freaked out and like completely melted his face off.
Yes, 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 because soon after entering the cave itself, you were brought in by a bunch of other malnourished and frantic people,
Hmm.
and they weren't wearing any armor at all. They had some weapons, a few vibro blades, and maybe a laser pistol, or maybe some conventional weapons. Um, but it just took a few shots of, Al's pistol, a few bit of your mega damage, pyrokinetic powers, and they, except for two individuals, were all killed. Those two individuals, who ended up being a fellow named Josh and a woman named Alicia, were actually just stunned due to Al's neuroblades.
Hmm.
Soon after, Mila started to freak out. Um, the medallion around Patrick's neck started to vibrate, which he calls Ed. And sure enough, by the mouth of the cave, a witchling appears. And this is a monstrous, evil creature that doesn't have any legs, actually. She kind of just floats there. But she looks like your conventional haggard witch, right? Ugly face, long, cruel, spindly arms, whatever. She cast a few spells at the group, kind of confounding them, until Mr. I Shoot shot this much in the eye.
Look,
Her
eye shooting
left
is a
eye.
long, glorious tradition. All right.
Yeah, 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 yeah. We'll get more into that later. But he shot her, I think, in the left eye this time, and it didn't instantly kill her, but it wounded her significantly. And with a curse and a promise of revenge, she disappeared. The group decided at that time they had enough and they didn't want to follow up or try to track her down. And instead, they investigated the rest of the cave, in which they found a state clearly where a lot of people were living in just squalid conditions. In addition, they found some magic items, including, give me a moment. Now I have to look at my notes. Because I remember two things. I'm just wondering. Oh, yes, yes, I remember them all now. So you found a large rock made of volcanic glass that was like a heating stone that always stayed very, very hot. Two large yellow citrine gems, which were later diagnosed to be PPE batteries. The realm of rifts, PPE stands for potential psychic energy. It's what people can draw. Every living thing has some of this potential psychic energy, and it is drawn in for to cast magic. And you can store this energy into certain gems, like these ones that they found. And you also and Patrick found a pitch black obsidian ring, which he, as they traveled, he started to diagnose and test out its abilities. Am I missing anything so far?
No,
The
I think
bracers.
we're good.
Yeah.
The bracers.
Okay.
Oh yeah.
That's right. Did you get the bracers?
No,
at
not
this
that
point?
time. No.
No, this is not when you got.
I could have sworn it was the first time that we. or-
No.
No. A little bit later on.
Yeah,
Okay.
definitely
My bad.
later.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm going through the little list here right now. Yeah, it's definitely later on. Yep. For another podcast, my dear friends. Suffice to say, they managed to talk with the two people that they managed to save, Alicia and Josh, and they pretty much said that this witchling, at random times, would kidnap or trick or enspell them, and she kept all these human beings as her thralls, as her servants. And they were both very, very weak, very emaciated, very malnourished. So Alicia in particular knew the closest town was a place called Perrin's Post, named after its founder and the person who runs it, Dan Perrin, who's also known as Finger. People, of course, the party heard of Dan's Perrin's name before. He was the one who hired those three bandits to go looking for one of these artifacts, assuming to be either the ring or the gems or the volcanic rock. And since that was the closest place that would have any sort of aid, they all decided to go there. I also remember Josh being very, very scared, understandably so, considering he was just, tricked and used as a slave by a witch. He was very scared of magic. And they were worried that Tom's pyrokinetic powers, although they're not magical, they're psionic. Josh might have been too scared to understand the difference, or maybe he wouldn't even care. So remember when you were traveling to Perrin's Post, Al kept Josh, you traveled in two parties actually. Alicia, Mila, Tom, and Patrick up ahead, and Al and Josh kind of lagging behind. I'm right in remembering that, right?
Yeah, we had two separate camps because what's-his-face didn't want to be...
Yeah, Al had to have a long fireside chat with him, yeah.
Yeah. Definitely. We're
And,
making good time so far.
Yeah, Al actually sat him down and talked about his past, and there was something about he had troubles with his village where he was from, and Al made a correlation between people not trusting him unfairly and him not trusting Tom unfairly. And by the time they got to, I think, Perrin's Post, he was not cured of his fear of magic, but more open-minded to it, I believe.
Yeah. He was at least less fearful, at the very least. So you guys traveled to Perrin's Post, which is a very frontier trading post-like area. Not very large, but it definitely has all the major amenities. General stores, weapon sellers, a pub, some inns, and so on and so forth. Outside the wall, they meet at the military checkpoint, in which the security agents there ask for... Oh, wait. There's one detail that we missed. In taking your spoils of war at Fletcher, you also realize that the cybernetics that Gino had was so significant, you decided to take his entire dead corpse to sell. And I remember traveling there that in order to distract or entertain Mila, Al gave her his scalpel and
Yeah, the
said,
laser
Yeah.
keep this safe. And Mila kept it safe by sticking it in the empty eye socket that was Gino. That
Yeah.
was in Gino. So
Gino's
when
been
the
reduced to scalpel carrier.
pretty much, pretty
Yeah.
But when they did the security check in your weapons and your armor because they weren't allowed inside the actual town proper or outpost proper, they also did a security check of the vehicle and they found Gino's corpse just lying there with a scalpel in his eye. But they weren't so worried about that. They're more interested in Gino's dead corpse. And they said, oh, you should hang out here for a bit. We're going to call the boss. And sure enough, the party meets Dan Finger Perrin and his dog, Sasha, who's a German Shepherd, an old German Shepherd dog that stays by his side at most times. Dan makes introductions to the group. He mentions that Gino and his compatriots, Max and Diego, actually caused a lot of trouble in Parents Post, doing a lot of damage. And in order for them to repay that damage, he set them out to retrieve something from a witchling that's been troubling the area. Turns out it's clear he lost contact from them. They went rogue. The party killed them, and he was as pleased as could be about that. And he actually he said he liked to meet every kind of new face, and so he invited everyone for dinner. You guys had dinner with Dan Finger Perrin. I remember at that time, after the nice little dinner in which Mila wanted chocolate milk and they didn't know how to make chocolate milk, so
Yeah.
they kind of faked it. I remember Dan pulling Tom aside and being like, yeah, so your friend Mila, is she with anybody? And he's like, she's with the entire group. He's like, no, romantically. I was like, oh, no. And that started the
I
very
remember that.
short courtship between Dan Finger Perrin and Mila. But this is where things in Perrin's Post, there were a lot of opportunities like for shopping and for just encountering a bunch of new things that we'll probably gloss over a little bit. As far as the shopping goes, there are a few things I want to hit on the head. The first is that you guys actually watched the movie Armageddon.
Oh
I
god, yeah,
remember that.
while we were shopping, right there in the store.
Right there in the store, because Patrick had quite a few of pre-rifts, so there was a big calamity that caused the apocalypse. And before that time, there were relics, right? Movies and music and all sorts of other technological items. And Patrick had a few of them. One of them was the movie Armageddon. He didn't have a disc player for it at the time, but the store did. So they decided to play it, and they all sat around for 2 hours and watched it. And it was very entertaining. It was very funny. The other important thing is that there was a tent outside of Parents Post for a shop called Cyberworks. And it was there that they realized that they could order a robotic companion. And the party wanted... Actually, I believe it was Alan Mila's idea to get the squirrel, right?
Yeah, I
Yes,
think it was-
because we had to go back to the group and be like, so we bought a squirrel.
Yeah, and it's like millions of credits. I remember
Yeah.
Patrick freaking out, being like, we can't afford that. Oh,
But Patrick, it's a squirrel.
by the way, as far as the NPCs go, Josh and Alicia both stayed at Perrin's Post. Alicia, they gave both NPCs some credits. Alicia kind of gathered her strength, and although Josh was more interested in going his own way, Alicia was kind of interested in kind of sticking with the group. She was very, very grateful for what they did for her. Anyway, back on track. Um, so yeah, so there was this. They wanted to get this robotic squirrel that cost millions of credits, and the person who was running the Cyberworks tent, a fellow named Jacob Emanuel. He was a DB with big, like, owl-like eyes, and he said, "Okay, well, maybe you can do a favor for me. Nearby, the Coalition are trying out these new robots called Skelelots. If you could mark their position for us, kind of just scout it out, that'd be great. And if you could actually get your hands on one of those things, I'd just wipe the entire debt for you." Uh, so they talked to Finger about that. Finger says, "No, don't fuck with the Coalition. I'd rather not that, please, very much. You have to convince Cyberworks not to." I was like, "Yeah, sure, no problem." And what ensues is Al and Tom deal with Cyberworks while Mila and Patrick rescue a cat from a tree. So we'll go into the Cyberworks thing first. And I've been doing a lot of the talking, so let me throw it to Tom and Al for that part for a little bit, if that works for you guys.
Sure. I would like to say this is the first time I remember confusing our GM for a moment. Like, I'm sure we may have done it beforehand, but it was the first time because I was like, all right, let's go talk to Cyberworks. We got this. And Inferno's like, really? Like, now?
Yeah, like right now.
Yeah, man.
We don't need like.
No, we don't need to go
special-
do anything. We got this. And
We're fine.
so, Tom, do you want to? Oh my God, Burn, do you want to take the lead?
No, you take it. If that's
All
fine.
right. So Al basically was very confident that he could solve the problem right then and there, and he asked Tom to come with him for backup, and told Tom to just look very stern. And so Al and Tom walked back into the Cyberworks tent to the DB with the allies. What was his name again? I'm sorry.
Sorry, not Zacharias. Jacob Emanuel. Jacob Emanuel.
Jacob. We walked up to Jacob, and Al sat down and basically started to say, "So, we need to talk. You just asked us to go spy on the Coalition Skelelots. Now, I am assuming that this is hypothetical. You wouldn't really do that because you wouldn't actually be dumb enough to ask a Coalition officer to go steal his own Skelelots." And the owl-like-eyed creature's Jacob is like, "I don't know what you're talking about." And the whole time, Al's acting very officer-like, aloof, taking his gloves off one finger at a time, and he starts saying and talking like a Coalition officer, things that only Coalition officers would know, in an attempt to convince this guy that Al is an undercover Coalition officer, and that the guy had just asked him to steal one of his own Skelelots. He rolled a really good convincing check and managed to convince Jacob.
Intimidate.
Yes, intimidate, not trust. But he managed to intimidate Jacob into thinking he was telling the truth, which made him pretty much all but freak out. And then he started backpedaling, like, no, well, of course it was just hypothetical. Of course I didn't mean you to actually. No, I would never do that. And then.
And here's a great big discount for you too, sir.
Actually, what happened was I was like, so about that squirrel.
That's right. That's how we got it so cheap.
Yeah, and I remember because Inferno said, "Oh, fuck you." So Al basically used the intimidation of, "Oh my God, I just screwed up. Please don't tell anyone." And go, "No, that's fine. This never has to leave the room, but we want that squirrel at like half price."
Oh, you got more than just half.
I don't remember exactly what we.
$2 million for it.
Yeah.
Maybe about 1 million credits or so for it, and it was really worth like 10 or 20 times that. But
so we got it very cheaply.
Yeah. So that's how they got a squirrel robot. Of course, it didn't happen. It wasn't manufactured there. It'd have to be sent out west and then shipped for a while. It'd take a few months. But in the meantime, Now I'm gonna throw it to Piff and Kriana
Oh boy.
to talk about Mittens.
Patrick, do you want to start us off because my memory is not as good as everyone else's?
Okay, so me, friggin' Patrick and me are like badasses. We're just strolling down the street. This old lady ran up to us, just like, "Please help me! There's a cat. I need her back."
Yeah, I'll draw us as badasses while you do this.
Thank you. And they were like, "Ma'am, step aside for professionals." And then, by the way, I'm gonna throw this out. I'm over exaggerating for
Yeah.
effect.
For dramatic purposes, sure.
So we just like, stand aside, ma'am. We got this. So we freaking like go up to this big ass tree, and the tree is just like, no, you can't get this cat down from here. And then we're like, we're gonna defeat you, monster. You just look big. Tree doesn't talk, by the way. It's
No.
a normal ass tree, and the cat, surprisingly enough, is also normal.
Yeah.
So freaking. Would you want to take the rest of this?
Yeah, so Mila's like, okay, I could go get the cat. So she climbs the tree, and then she sees the cat, and I think she started talking to the cat.
Yes.
What happened is that, yeah, you started screaming for the cat. You found out it was by the tree. It started meowing. You climbed it, and it was pretty frightened. And you started to sing to the cat to calm it down.
Oh.
Mhm.
And then I told the cat to come to me.
At that point, yeah, go ahead.
Patrick was trying to find a way to get Mila down from the tree. Kind of minus the whole cat thing. He needs to get Mila down. So he's just like, alright, I got a rope, and let's find something heavy. He finds a rock, ties the rock to the end of the rope, gives a mighty weakling heave, and actually gets it up there.
So then
Yep.
Mila sees that the rope is there and is like, "Oh, good," and grabs the cat and tries to have it grab the rope.
The cat didn't want to grab the rope. Started thrashing around all over the place.
So then Mila looked down at Patrick, saying that you don't climb down ropes, you climb the up ropes.
Yeah.
Stupid.
Yeah, like, come on, Patrick, where's your game? face?
So I think Patrick heard something about like, hey, I'm going to like drop it down, and I think Patrick was getting out his like backpack to catch the cat, but what Mila meant was both her and cat at the same time, and was going to jump down.
Yep.
I don't even know how. It was actually a fairly tall tree, and just jumped down.
It was. It was
Yeah.
a good, I think, 15 to 20 feet.
So, Mila then puts the cat on her head. Cat claws adheres to Mila's forehead, and they jump.
And Patrick catches them, if I
Yep.
remember correctly.
A weakling catch actually catches them moderately well, stumbles to the floor, and sits down. That could have gone way worse, by the way.
Yep.
Yeah.
But luckily that
yeah.
worked out.
Yep, definitely. And the woman who lost the cat was very, very grateful. She took both of you over to her home, her farmstead. She fed you, and she also offered an old map that her now long past husband had collected. He always wanted to follow it someday, but he never had a chance, and so she passed it on to Patrick. And it looked, for lack of a better word, it looked like a treasure map. It was coordinates going through a certain amount of landscape, and ending up at some place where there was some sort of riches. So, armed with that, the party was ready to go on another kind of grand adventure to kind of follow this treasure map. And that's where we'll end things, except for one last thing. While they were staying in Perrin's Post for the first time, they also stopped by the nearby bar named also, by the way, I had a lot of fun naming a lot of these places. Like the general goods store was called the Broken Drum. You know why, guys?
Cause
Yes.
it can't be beat.
That's right.
Yay!
Nah.
But the oh yes, it's the Horn and Hornet Bar and Dance Hall. And while they were there, they're having some drinks. They actually met there with the CyberWorks representative who kind of gave them that Skelebot job. But Tom was hit on by a red-haired woman named Cleopas, who propositioned him in the most unconventional way. She was determined to be a Psi stalker. These are individuals who have a rare mutation where they do not need to eat food or drink water. Instead, they're sustained by this PPE, this potential psychic energy. And Tom, being a psychic, had that in spades. So she kind of wanted to kind of feed off his energy in like a sexy way, but she was coming on him pretty strong. He was 16 years old, and it was kind of predatory in a way that made Al like literally threaten her.
Yeah.
You
Tom
threaten
didn't
physical
understand what the hell was going on.
Yeah. She's
Yeah.
like, this nice girl is talking to me. I was like, don't
Pretty
you mess with
lady.
my friends. She runs for the bouncer, and the bouncer's just like, all right, she's a bit of a drama queen. Can you guys just leave now? And they're like, sure, no problem, right? So there was no big bar fight or anything like that, but I almost forgot about that, and that was hilarious.
I forgot Al's such a C blocker.
Mm-hmm.
C-block. Also, I remember at this point when Alicia was recovering, and you guys were all getting together. Was this the point where certain histories were revealed, or was it after the treasure hunt? Pretty sure it was at this point.
I'm fairly sure it was before the treasure hunt.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
how about we end before we open up for questions? How about we end with that stuff, if that works for you guys?
Yeah. I don't quite remember how it came around, though. I do know people were
Oh.
questioning. Oh no, do you
Mhm.
remember?
I do remember actually.
Then by all means.
For some, I remember the coalition, the word of the coalition came up, and that's when Tom told a little bit of his backstory and why he was on the road. So why don't we start with that part from you, Byrne?
Well, actually, first off, Al started talking about his past. And
Did
then
he?
I kind of
Yeah,
Oh.
because
Al
I
was
believe
first 'cause
people
he-
people
he
were
was
asking
saying-
certain questions because he not only he was showing up he just showed a breathtaking amount of coalition knowledge
I-
when he
Oh, yeah, there's the picture that Krana drew. I
Yeah.
remember why. I remember what it was. This was before Al actually did his Skelebot intimidation. This is when the group was still considering doing that mission. And Al knew a lot about coalition tactics and what they would do, right? And I can't remember. We have a chicken and the egg thing coming on. You know what I mean? Because at some point, Al knew the
Right.
coalition was looking for the party, and he would know how to counter that. And in order to explain that, he revealed some of his past. But in order to know that the coalition was going after the group, Tom would have to disclose some part about his backstory, wouldn't he?
No. No.
I'm so
At that
confused.
point, he didn't explain it because he knew the coalition was coming after us. He explained it because he started to feel guilty, if I recall correctly.
it was something like that. Okay, it's hard to remember everything. I think it was part that it was also
Anyways.
part that whatever the case may be, Al
Yeah.
came clean
Yeah.
to the group.
Because
That,
I know specifically because of how I said it. Tom was after everything had happened
Yeah.
with Al. He was like, "Oh yeah, and the same people are after me as well."
Okay, all right. So
I-
enough pussyfooting around, I guess. We might as well
Right.
talk about what.
So
the actual
basically,
reveals are.
Al revealed to the group that he wasn't actually a doctor. He was an ex very important to put the X there, an ex-coalition spy that had been trained to play the role of a doctor in one of the Free City hospitals, where he didn't go into too much detail, but basically something had happened that made him lose faith in the coalition military, and he could no longer stand being a coalition soldier. So he ran, and he mentioned that a highly trained officer running from the coalition, they don't like that too much. So that there was some danger to that.
Yeah.
Hmm.
And Tom had started to explain that he was at at the very least partially involved with a ley line nexus exploding near his house, and he is the only survivor from that incursion. But he did go on to explain that before that happened, the coalition had gone into the town and started executing people.
Gotcha.
And this, at the end
Hmm.
result of all of that, is when Tom got his pyrokinetic powers.
Cool, cool. And for those of you who are listening, who are being like, "What the hell is this coalition that everyone's talking about?" The coalition is kind of, I guess you could say, an alliance of certain kingdoms or certain states that rose up from the apocalypse, and they all united over a single form of government. There's about 5 of these coalition states in North America. The capital, the biggest and most prosperous state is in what used to be, well, it's southwest of what used to be Chicago. Its capital is called Chi-Town. And yeah, they're known for being authoritarian and militaristic, at the very least. So,
Oh,
uh, huh?
chat. Thank you, chat. No, chat's absolutely right. They just
Yeah,
refresh my memory. No, Tom had spoken first about the
I
coalition being
know it.
after him, and then Al said, "Hey, I can help with that, and here's why."
Yep.
But I
That's
could
right.
have
They're
sworn
absolutely right. No,
I
no,
could
no.
have sworn that I wasn't
No,
first though.
no. Well, you might have
Like,
just said a little bit about it, and then Al took it from there, and then you revealed more. But I know
Right.
you're the one who first
But
who
because
talks
I
first
now
about the
totally remember,
coalition.
yeah, because
Yeah.
Al said, if you're running from the coalition, I can help you avoid them. And then he had to kind of explain why. So, yeah.
yeah.
Yes. Great. Okay, I'm not crazy. Suffice to say, that's what we're end things off. Some things were revealed, and the party's ready to go on their next
Hmm.
big adventure
Mhm.
after defeating a witchling and some bandits, and meeting and greeting with the folks at Perrin's Post.
Hmm.
So now I guess we can open it up for any questions.
Yeah.
Yeah,
And chat
yeah.
is also right. Tom is like the third most wanted on the
Well,
coalition
at that time he
at that
was
time. Yeah.
like, at the time he was wanted, but I don't know if he was number 3 at the time. But he was on the most wanted list for sure.
So,
Yeah.
what you're saying is he had room to grow.
Yeah.
Oh, he certainly did.
He did.
Yes,
He sure did, and boy, did you guys grow. But enough foreshadowing. Yeah, we'll leave it up to see if there's any questions that you guys have, of course, about the characters, or for me, the GM, or anything like that. Anything that you've been wondering about. Um, it was really really fun. It was the first few sessions. Really really really. I mean, I still get excited to play this game, but it's when you guys started to. You guys didn't. Um, I will mention this thing. I do remember, in particular, Patrick and Tom being a little bit more withdrawn, not shy per se, right? But they didn't really. They went along with whatever the plan was at that point, right? And Al was definitely the dominant motivational force at the time. But you guys were all still kind of getting to know each other
Hmm.
and figuring out, the group dynamic. And that doesn't mean like other players didn't get to do anything, right? But I do recall Al being like the big motivator of the group, right? The big planner of the group.
Hmm.
Hmm.
Uh, how hard is it to DM riffs from Chronic Crayon?
It's only as hard as any other RPG. Sometimes actually a little bit easier since The folks at Palladium encourage for you to use house rules or use what works and what doesn't work. You're kind of free as a DM to play around. For example, for the first half of the time we were playing Rifts, we used a changed initiative system in which I broke everything down into this 20-point spreadsheet. You guys remember that?
Yes.
And if you rolled your initiative and you divided what you got by how many attacks you
Oh,
had, and then
that's
everyone
right.
acted in sequence. And it worked, but it was slow. So we ended up getting rid of that for a moment. Yeah, and this will be posted as a podcast video. Thanks.
I would say too that one thing I really like about GMing Rifts now that I have some experience on my belt, and Inferno, you and I have both talked about this, is that you have such a big playground to choose from as a
Yeah.
GM. You have so many big, just everything to make adventures with.
Yeah, there's the amount of source materials are bananas because this game was made in the late 80s and they haven't made new editions since. Grimmeth in the chat is teasing that it's a venerable system, so it needs house rules to update it. But that's definitely one perspective. But the other perspective is that you can, as compared to other game materials that come out with new editions and therefore new splat books for each new edition, this just keeps adding on to the world. So the important thing, I guess, is not to get intimidated. Just pick and choose whatever you think is cool or whatever will work. But you could go with almost anything in Rifts, so we're all good.
Hey,
Yeah, well-
Inferno, in your
Yes.
world, would 20 kilovolts of electricity be SDC or MDC damage, and how much of each?
I don't know. I don't know what a kilovolt is. I don't know how powerful that is. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
For me, it would be the source. If it was from some supernatural monster or a robot, yeah. If it's from like a guy putting his socks on the carpet and zapping a dude, probably SDC.
Oh my god! There's a question: How high ranking was I guess Al in the coalition when he was a spy? I don't think we ever really said he would have been an officer because
Yeah, he's a military
specialist would have been an
specialist.
officer. But I would assume probably maybe a first or second lieutenant, maybe a first lieutenant. He'd be very low on the ranks because he wasn't. He spent I think 6 years in the coalition, and most of that had to have been training.
Yeah, it definitely was. And he was a special espionage agent, so yeah.
So he
he's a
probably would have been
spy.
higher than a captain, because I know if it's anything like the regular military, once you get beyond captain, you're generally not out in the field anymore. So, and captains are generally very experienced. So I would say a lieutenant. He would have had to have been a lieutenant.
Oh yeah, I also remember during this time, you guys as a group were just being like, Mila doesn't really like to fight. We should
Yeah.
find a role for her. She likes to sing. She can be like our bard.
Oh, that's right. Yeah, you guys tried to convince Mila to sing during the battle. I think she was like, I mean, I guess I can. Like,
Yeah, and then you hit somebody once with your hammer, and we were like, maybe we should rethink this.
I don't believe I ever hit anyone.
Nope.
Not.
I remember
no,
the
not
first
the
time.
few.
I remember the first
I
time
remember the
you
first time
break
too.
into a fight. That'll be a little bit
Oh.
later on.
Oh,
but
you
yeah.
drew something about that too, didn't you?
Yeah.
About what?
The first time you actually a certain yub and ducking.
No, I didn't hit anyone. I just held up the weapon and told him
Oh,
to go
yeah.
away.
Yeah, that's true. Okay, that's
Yeah,
good.
yeah. Oh, we're alluding to too much stuff, but
Yes.
yeah,
Too much.
that will all be taken care of next podcast for sure.
Yeah.
A couple more. We have time for a couple more questions, yeah, guys.
Yeah.
Sure. Okay. So there's one for me, and then there's one for all you guys as a player. So Scar's asking, have any useful tips to keep it fun? Easiest way to keep it fun is to don't take everything so seriously, obviously, right? But the easiest way to keep things fun is just listen to the players. They when they laugh at certain things or when they get really engaged with something, so you just you feed off of them, and then it's super fun. And the other thing is just to keep on trying, even if it doesn't work. At least you're giving it a shot, and you're having fun with it. So yeah. And Buster Bro wants to know, for the players, how did you guys create your characters? Like, did you all talk with each other? Like, probably confer with each other to cover your bases, or did you guys not know?
We
With
had
this
no
role play,
idea.
we did not know.
No.
I can tell you Mila was based off of a song, and like this was before whenever I listen to music, I always come up with like different stories like to go along with music in my mind because I want to make comic books, but I'm always too lazy to do it. And Mila's was a really depressing one, and then Inferno was like, yeah, we're doing this Rifts thing. And I'm like, oh, I can use this. I'm like, God, this is depressing, but let's do it. So that was Mila.
Hmm. I still have that picture too that you drew.
Yeah. Most of
You
them.
have that?
Yeah,
I just
Oh,
wanted
you
to
were
play
looking
Ralph
for it? Cool.
Fire.
I can pull it up.
That's all. I just wanted.
You just wanted to play a guy who had sweet, awesome fire powers?
Yeah, and
Sweet.
there was the question earlier for me.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, with both Patrick and uh, Al getting a secondary class, getting a second class. I said the same thing twice. Anyways, is there any? Wow, that's a really cool picture.
That's one of the first ones I drew.
True, yeah.
And
Well,
believe
we-
it or not, even after all this time, we as players don't even know what that is.
Nope.
Yeah.
I
No
do!
Well, I can piece some things together from what we've learned, but we'd only be guessing. So
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep.
But anyways, they asked if I would be interested in putting Tom into another class. There are a couple of classes that seem fairly neat, like warlocks, fire warlocks, on top of Tom's pyrokinetic powers would be really cool. But also spatial mages. I still like the idea of creating my own little pocket dimension with my own separate roles and everything.
So speaking of character classes, with Rifts, the character classes aren't balanced against each other. You could be anything, so that's pretty neat. Anyways, but back on to the original question of what made you guys kind of create your characters. We still need to hear from Mr. Piffy and Mr. Squeepy.
Should we rock, paper, scissors, Squee?
sure.
Um,
Did I win?
rock.
Oh crap! I go first.
Can't be rock. All right, go ahead, Piff.
Alright, so, actually, Inferno might remember this quite well. I actually didn't look through any of the classes and literally just kind of dictated to him, just kind of like, this is what I want as a character concept. And, we actually just kind of he went through like, oh, how about this and this and this and this? And I was just like, yeah, I like the flavor of this. I like the concept of this. I really want this particular character. I'm not quite sure how much we revealed in the first few episodes, but I did say that I was a tinkerer, and that he does some smart things. So there's that.
Definitely. And go ahead, Squeepy.
I was kind of the same way. I went to Inferno and I said, okay, so I've been thinking a lot, and I've never done this before. Play as one class that pretends to be a completely different class. And we kind of worked together to figure out how that would be done and what would be cool with that. Because I wanted to play a character that was like a spy, that was very trained to pretend and could pull off the idea of being a doctor, which is a completely different class. They're called body fixers in Rifts, but I'd never done that before, and it was really interesting and fascinating. So basically, my whole character is designed around after we discovered kind of what we wanted, it kind of just designed around, well, what would a spy learn, and that's how I built him around.
That's the real nice. I'll end things. We're talking about classes. The really nice thing too is that in this game, people don't walk around with their class stapled on their forehead or their chest, you know? It's clear, like, if you were made of robots, then you're probably a Borg, right? If you have a bunch of these chemicals hooked into you, you're probably a juicer, right? But for most of the classes, especially the ones that are based on skill and has no bearing on appearance, people don't know who you are. You know what I mean? Like, look at a big group of people. Can you figure out who the plumber is, you know, or who the lawyer is? Probably not, unless they're dressed in their working clothes. Suffice to say, at this point, it was really exciting. A lot of the players weren't broadcasting what the classes were, and a lot of individuals in the comment section were guessing what the classes of everyone was, and that was kind of fun. That was pretty dynamic. Yeah.
There's a question asking Piff and me why we wanted to take magic.
That's
That's
well,
further down the
I
line.
can tell you that Patrick is interested in magic things. I think that was at least evident in the first few episodes.
Yeah, that actually might be a question better saved for later on.
Yeah,
Come back to us on that one.
Yeah, definitely. Don't want to jump too far ahead and confuse the people, the newbies. So with that, I guess we can wrap things up if that works for you guys.
Yeah.
Sure.
All right. Well, thanks everyone for listening. Okay. So we'll be back in about 5-ish minutes, guys.